or what you could call a ministry of language, because there is no European Minister of Affairs. Whatever language policy comes from Brussels or comes from Strasbourg, from the Council of Europe, is implemented on a voluntary basis in the whole of Europe. So the Common European Framework of Language reference, Common European Framework for Languages, Common European Framework for Languages, the CEFR, commonly known, is a little bit like, you can compare it with marks in the school. A mark from 1 to 6, no, it's not. It's just levels, yeah, it's levels. It's describing beginners. Time ago we would say beginners, intermediate, advanced. That was the 3 levels. They've been extended to 6. What comes with it is a beautiful set of descriptions of can-do statements. So a learner of B2, what can he actually do? The CFR was introduced in 2001. Yeah, okay, we're going to start. Jeff, do you want to come on stage? Apologies, which I haven't given you rights to speak. Jeff Tranter is with us. I thought I had promoted you earlier, maybe you dropped out. Do you want to come on stage? No, we can start. Yes, the whole thing.
Can you hear me yet?
Yes, I can, Jeff.
Right, I've just switched on my camera.
Beautiful. I'll switch mine off just a second to some water.
Okay, yes. Hello, everybody.
Hello, hello. Jeff, thank you for joining us.
You can hear me?
Where from? I can hear you loud and clear.
From the foot capital of Europe, Dortmund.
We're going to play finals here. So that's Bavaria, Munich, and Dortmund in the Champions League.
That's next week.
That is next week, exactly, in Wimbledon Stadium, isn't it?
In Wembley, yeah.
Wembley Stadium. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Wimbledon is tennis. That's so much I know football. But I'm looking forward. What about you?
Absolutely. The game of the century.
You are a Bayern fan, are you?
You must be joking. Can we? Oh. Yes. Let's see how it goes. Yes, we don't want to alienate anybody who might be listening from Bavaria. So I think we'll avoid the topic of football at the moment.
Good idea. Give me about 2 or 3 minutes. I think we're about ready to start with the recordings.
Okay, just let me know when to start.
With the live stream. I think we can start with the live stream. So, is everybody ready? Ready to go? Okay, thank you very much so I'm going to start the recording here also. Yes, live stream is up and running. Fantastic. CEFR discussion. Hello and welcome everybody to the virtual roundtable CEFR discussion, the Common European Framework for Language, Framework of Reference for Languages. Put that rightly. Public discussion, which has been started with Jeff's fantastic insider knowledge on the matter of CEFR as he's been traveling around Europe talking as a tester, as part of Mondiale testing system, but also an independent consultant and teaching a trainer for aviation industry and everything else. He is traveling the world, and he's the last 10 years also quite a bit of amount in teacher training on that very subject. So I couldn't have found a better person to present this with, and he has very encouraging and very thought-provoking thoughts that he brought along. But Jeff Tranter, just briefly, 40 years of experience in language teaching and further in adult education, covering all areas of English language teaching, including vocationally oriented classes. For most of these years, head of department or director of studies. 30 years of experience in language teaching, language testing, covering all aspects, such as a curricular development, production materials, examiner training, and quality control. Now a freelance in institutions, including ministries of education, the German Civil Aviation Authority, and for German airlines in the field of language test for German pilots. Course book author for language learners at all levels and regular speaker at international conferences. The one thing we also know Jeff to be famous is his book on humor in the classroom. And Jeff is usually presenting at every open mic, wherever at the conferences. I think his very, very funny world waffle, the kind of humor that he has is just brilliant. You have to go and get his book. So 10 things you did not know. Just to give you a little background, and especially the sort of the subject of this, what we call a public discussion. We would like you, to the audience, to freely comment and in us in a discussion about the CEFR, which has been quiet for quite a number of years, according to Jeff. We would like to hear your input, even if you're not part of Europe, around the world. You will hear in a minute why. And yeah, let's give it a start. So we will change the layout for the discussion in a minute, just after the presentation, so that you can provide all of your input to the discussion. We're looking forward to this. Jeff, over to you. Presentation, and I was told the presentation takes about 10 minutes. We have a total of 1 hour, so we have a lot of time still to debate. This is just like a sparked input.
Okay, well, thank you, Heike, and thank you for the opportunity to today and talk about the Common European Framework of Reference, because that is only 12 years old, and in the first 4 or 5 years, everybody just wanted to know about the CEFR and simply implement the CEFR. Ministries all over Europe implemented the CEFR. Further education courses, publishers, test systems all use the CEFR. But it has, as you said, gone quiet over the last 2 or 3 years, and you're also quite right in saying that IATEFL and major conferences seem to have forgotten the topic in their workshops. Perhaps it's also due to the fact that in these 12 years another generation of teachers has come into the education system, and they have perhaps less knowledge or are not really interested in the Common European Framework, which I think is a shame, because it offers teachers quite a few opportunities. And not knowing whether the audience is familiar with the Common European Framework or not, I decided to change the title to 10 Things You Not Know, or Things You May Not Know, or 10 Things You Would Like to Know about the Common European Framework. As you can see in the top left-hand corner, that is the original version of the framework, which was published in 2001. Now, people often ask the question, is my B1 your B1? As there are 6 levels, and seems to be some kind of discussion as to whether B1 is really B1 or the B1 that some people offer or have is the same as other B1. This is a problem that's been in further education, adult education, education of all sectors for many years. In fact, just to come back to the humour point that Heike a few moments ago, even Shakespeare might have had a problem with this and might have said B2 or not B2, that is the question. And so let's try and talk about the 10 questions. My topic is 10 questions, 10 aspects, 10 statements about the Common European Framework. And I would like to use one or two questions that I bring up as a basis for the discussion, public discussion afterwards. Now, the first is the CEFR defines 6 proficiency levels, A1 all the way up to C2, for all languages, language learning situations, for all age groups, for all purposes, for all languages. But that is, as it sounds, very vague. And if we have all age groups, from children or senior citizens, if we have all purposes for general purposes, in a business purpose, possibly English for no purpose, how can we bring them all together? So the first question is, what does it mean, especially for ESP? And ESP, English for professional purposes, English for academic purposes, is a growing market. What can that offer for ESP? And there is very little reference to ESP in the descriptors, in the definitions of level, but the only impression you possibly might get is that ESP or English purposes starts at B2. Well, that is true or not is something we could possibly discuss. Equally, the question is, what does this mean for tests for children? If it's a definition of level for all language learning situations, could this be useful as a basis for tests for children? Many descriptors, many definitions at higher levels, and nowadays there's a trend towards children 12, 13, 14 taking a higher level examination. If you read those descriptors, you will find there are not only linked competencies which are required, but also extra-linguistic or non-linguistic competencies, like rhetorical skills and interpersonal skills. So how can we have such conformity for all age groups? The second statement is the CEFR defines 6 language proficiency levels, A1 to C2. But perhaps you could ask yourself at this moment, what level am I in another language? If I go back to my French, which I studied at school many, many years ago, I'm still about C1 in reading. I am in listening, because I'm very rusty and have little contact, A1, A2. In speaking, more than A2, and in writing, perhaps B1, B2 if I have time. So what level does that actually leave me at? So how useful is a level for a person's efficiency, communicative efficiency in another language? Is it perhaps not more useful to have a profile? And my example showed my profile is C1 in reading French, A1, A2 in listening and understanding French, A2 after a glass of wine, perhaps B1 in speaking French, etc. So is a profile perhaps not more useful? And would it perhaps not be, coming back to ESP and English for Business, for technical purposes, is it perhaps not better for an employer to have a profile, a language profile that meets the challenges of the workplace for potential applicants? This seems to be a trend. Here is something that comes from Switzerland. There they had a project to say, or to find out what language levels trained staff in Swiss trains should have. As everyone knows, there are at least 3 major languages in Switzerland. And so train conductors have to go from one level to the other. But they decided that speaking is B1, writing A1, because they don't have to write so much in the trains, listening B1, reading B2 or A2, a good example of a profile. And to have B1 as the only profile overall would seem to be unnecessary. Similarly with pilots, if you take the 30 communicative skills and sub-skills recorded or listed in the Common European Framework, you'll see aviation English has what do pilots actually? Only about 8 or 9. So it is possible to filter out in the field of ESP the ones which are not necessary. So is it possible to have a profile rather than a single level? Now the European Framework defines language proficiency on the basis of 50 different categories. Communicative categories and linguistic quality categories. If I have B1, does that mean I fulfill all 50 or not? And if I say I have reached B1, I tell a future employer I have reached B1, what does that actually mean related to all the 50 particular individual language categories? The next statement is the overall approach of the Common European Framework, which is basically communication, action-based, as they write in the document, compared with accuracy, knowledge-based. There's obviously a kind of conflict between the two. But what does that mean in terms of communication inaccuracy? How does that relate to what happens in the classroom? If we take all these 30 skills or sub-skills, which are the sub-skills and the categories found in the Common European Framework, these are the linguistic competencies, 20, vocabulary, grammatic accuracy, phonological control, orthography, strategic competence, social linguistic competencies. One can ask the question, to what extent is what is the relationship between communication and others? And is it perhaps different from level to level? With these 50 skill-based and linguistic categories, the CEFR provides an essential quality checklist for teachers. It is a tool. Many teachers seem to reject the book itself, but it is a resource. It's a teaching resource, an essential quality checklist for teachers. With the help of the CEFR and the 50 categories, you can actually look to see if the test or the book that you are working with really are B1 as they say they are, or B2 as they say they are, by reference to the definitions on that particular level. Secondly, if you teach a B1 course, your course director or your college says this is a B1 course, do they actually tell you what a B1 course should come quite apart from the book to work with? And here I think the WYSIWYG principle is quite useful. But the term WYSIWYG dates me and dates everybody who knows it. What it stands for is what you see is what you get. And at the beginning of the 90s, end of the 80s, end of the 90s, when PC monitors were not as good as they are today, there used to be a big difference between what you saw on the screen and what your printer actually produced. So WYSIWYG meant what you see on the monitor is what you get at the printer. And similarly with courses, if a student registers for a B1 course or B2 course, what they see in the advert, what they see in the course description should be what they get in the course. And so the teacher can see what the difference is between B1 and B2 and see all the things that they should be taught in the class. Interestingly enough, the CEFR does not provide a C2 definition for pronunciation and intonation, which is the best proof that the CEFR has nothing to do with native speaker competence. The whole CEF has to do only with the competence of people who are using or learning language as a second or as a foreign language. And if it were, there are at least 2 of the last 4 American presidents who would not be C2. And there's also a statesman in the south of Germany who is definitely not C2 in German. So basic point is the Common European Framework has nothing to do with native speakers. The CEFR designates learners at B level B1 and B2, independent users. Independent use sounds good. I can use language myself. I don't need any help. I don't need the help of any interlocutor I am talking to. On the other hand, that could be misunderstood by people. And if learners are independent, how can we motivate them to progress? Above all, how can we actually help them progress? Because at B1 level, you are able to communicate, not necessarily elegantly, not necessarily correctly, but you are able to communicate. So how can we, and this is a problem that communicative teaching and communicative testing have, in a B1, a B2, C1, C2 test, which is based on communication, how can you go beyond task management, because B1 already means you can solve tasks. The CEFR claims to be descriptive, not prescriptive. In other words, it describes a system, that's why it calls itself a framework. But on the other hand, ministries all over Europe, quality management systems, prescribe CEF levels for certain purposes. And the question is then, is the CEFR being misused or abused in such cases? And very often, especially ministries, go beyond the bare definitions of B1. And to just give you an example, if you look at the B1 definition of grammatical accuracy and then compare that with the red marks to be found on students' work after having been corrected at B1 level, we can see that there is a discrepancy between the B1 definition of the Common European Framework and the way it is interpreted by ministries. At the present time, there are actually 39 translations of the CEFR plus one in the pipeline, that is Romanian, and here we have the 39 on the next slide. These are the 39 languages in which it has been translated, and the ones which I have put in red show it is not only a European system, it is an international system: Arabic, Chinese, Japanese, Korean. And it may not be the best system in the world, but obviously the only system in the world. And this is being adopted by not only European countries, by countries all over the world as a standard for level competence in languages. My final statement is there is only one CEFR, but there are at least hundreds of interpretations. And so every time you see a test, every time you see a school curriculum, every time you see a course book, that is somebody's or some committee's interpretation of CEFR. And because these may vary, the very valid question is, whose interpretation is correct? And that is why we have this statement: is your B1 her, my, your, his, their B1? Which is where we started. Not with Shakespeare, but with B1. And so the questions I wanted to throw up for discussion, I've gone through them very fast, but I think these questions need to be discussed, and I hope that we do now have a lively discussion on these questions. The first one is your B1 my B1? And how do we know? What does the CEFR offer for English as a foreign, English for specific purposes, English for business, technical purposes, academic purposes? Is the idea of competence levels really useful, or should we thinking more in terms of profiles? Does a B1 qualification mean B1 in all the 50 categories? What is the relationship between communication skills and language skills, between communication and accuracy? And how can the designated course level, which you have teacher, be realized in the classroom? So those are my things. And I hope that we now have questions.
Thank you very, very much, Jeff.
I thank you for attention, and here we have the list of questions, and I look forward to a lively discussion.
Okay, and for the discussions, we will move over, but we do have the questions still available, if that's okay. I need to just switch on. Oops, it's a bit cold. Let me just open the questions that Jeff has posted. And that's the 10 things. Oops, no, that was the wrong one. Here we go. These are the 6 questions that Jeff is raising. So can you remember some of the arguments that Jeff has presented as to why the CFR is, well, it's a framework of reference, a descriptive framework of reference, a prescriptive one, and that it holds a couple of points that it's missing. So the question to you, what did you pick up from what the 10 things that one didn't know or might not know about the CFR? What stands out to you as being the biggest issue with the CFR? Interestingly, that it was developed in 2001 and never got revised. Yeah. And if any of you would like to join in the discussion in voice, we would be happily granting you webcam and speaking rights. I've seen Susan Nocky, who's been very engaged in this discussion, Vicky Somel. If you wanted to come and join us on stage for the discussion, we'd be very delighted. Hi, Helen. Number 5, Daria. Okay, do you want to come up? Yeah, Bernie, do you also want to come up, or do you feel like wanting to join us here? And it doesn't mean that you have to be an expert to be joining us for the discussion. No. It just means that you're interested in the subject. So feel free to request for me to promote you. Simon, Susan, you can't talk now? Okay. You can write, that's fine, perfectly okay. And she's got fantastic input. If you look at it, Susan thinks that the move from descriptive CFR and prescriptive is always a bit dangerous. Many institutions have done it as they feel they need levels for their courses. Only that the problem is that different institutions deal with exams in different ways. The big difference is around Europe and the same country. And perhaps we could also ask the question, why does it seem to be such a difference in how the CFR said? The Italians are quite good with it. What about the English? Why are the English not very good with?
Well, there's a different. Traditionally, it has been the influence of
I cannot swim. It never crossed the channel.
Rather humorous way of looking at this, but advanced, normally related to, for example, the Cambridge exam. But if you look at publishing, there's lower intermediate, upper intermediate. It becomes so vague. So, and a system in Britain took along to how should we say, to market in some cases required changes in order to put the international examinations within the local time. There were similar developments in France for the CEFR to get established in French education systems, but now that seems to have happened.
And market, I mean, and especially the LT dominant native speaker market, which is the stronghold, isn't it? And if you quite rightly identified that the C2 level does not put emphasis on pronunciation.
Well, yes, but C2 level is not native speaker, because native speakers do not normally communicate at a C2 level. I mean, if I were in court, if I had been charged with murder, I would want my lawyer to be C2, obviously. But and if I was a radio institution like the BBC, I would want all the journalists at the BBC to be C2. So are very, very special cases, and most people communicate at a language level of at most B2, because otherwise, apart from that, it's necessary.
And now I would like to add a couple of things that Susan mentioned, because she's really into that subject, yeah?
Okay.
That the one addresses is that institutions are in such a need for students that they tend to lower the expectations, use higher marks that do not correspond to the actual level, which means they're corrupting the scales, as it were, isn't it?
They're not taking the scales as seriously as they are meant to. Because if the scales are available in order to provide comparison between people's systems and to demand or to show or demonstrate a particular competence level, then we need to keep to those as possible, or as more as possible. Otherwise, but I know in German universities and British universities, they need students to study at the university, and if they have too high, excessively high language qualifications, then of course they will not get students they require for financial reasons. And so that is why B2, your B2, my B2, your C1, my C1, it's not, this is one of the things that I wanted to stress, it's not the CEFR that has weak in this particular case, it's the way it is interpreted by other people. Yeah? It is prescribed, which was what the CEF did not want. Level must be achieved, and on the other hand, in order to make sure that people as people as possible achieve this level, they, to use your word, corrupt the system and allow people who have not fulfilled the requirements to still get the level that they need in order to start a course of studies at that university. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And here's an interesting point, yeah? He says there's so many who have been identified as B1 level by the language schools, and it seems to be such a big step to reach B2 level.
It is true. I mean, another, this is a criticism of the 6 levels.
Do you know how many hundreds of hours do you need in order to reach A1 and that? Can you give us an idea? Because I know that there's also a very, yeah?
That's a problem. That's a problem because it depends on many factors. For example, it depends on how intensive or how extensive the course is. It depends on the motivation and things like this. And also another important problem is that although A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2 sound as if they were equidistant, they are not. And quite true that the step from B1 to B2 and especially from B2 to C1 are wider, for example, than the step from A1 to A2. So there are problems there, criticisms, and I think even the Council of Europe agree that A1 is too narrow and that C2 is also should be revised. But to come back to what you said about language schools, these people are B1. I mean, everybody should know whether, especially teachers, especially schools, and this should be also instilled in the awareness of learners, should know what the basic feature of B1 composite is, and is the need. A very interesting concept of the Common Europe not yet independent and independent. And anybody who's been in a different country where, with minimal knowledge of the language, know how important it is in some cases to have this sympathetic speaker, and how well you feel and how safe you feel when you do when you have.
Fantastic. And now we're going to pass over to Vicky, who's joining us. Hi, Vicky. Where are you joining us from?
Hi, Vicky.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well done.
Than I am, but I just wanted to contribute a few ideas that I think make the CEFR very, very valuable for teachers. And at the CEFR talk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very important is, of course, being B1. Discussion with other language teachers could not do before because we did not know what levels I think we should be much more in touch with the actual document. I posted the link on the chat window, but I can if you want. The online PDF is now on I uploaded it to my Google Drive, and I can of course, if you want to download that document, because that's very interesting.
So tell me, Vicky, what does Argentina have to do with the CEFR?
In Argentina, yeah, it's a good thing. In Argentina, most of the course books that publishers are offering have been reworked or relabeled with the CEFR levels.
Interesting.
So the books used to, because we were very, very tied up with the Cambridge levels, PET, first certificate.
Change the labels or change the content?
Good one.
Okay. Delegated on the teacher by a institution that organizes the courses. The teacher needs to actually B1 is. Source book B1 is a level, and there are key words that describe B1. One of them is independent. Another one is the topic areas that the routine areas, whereas B2 is non-routine topic areas. The number of mistakes that are permissible
Could you just
with
say
or without
the last
communication.
again?
Problem.
We're breaking up a little bit. Just the last two sentences. Emphasis of the B1 and 2.
There are various elements.
You were breaking up.
But there are certain key words, signal words, that teachers need to have immediately available at B1 level or B2 level, or below B1 level. Which I mentioned before, is a basic difference between to extend a person can communicate beyond the normal routine everyday topics and go on to other more abstract topics. The difference between B2 and C1 is to the extent to which go beyond the mundane one clause sentence, and they can actually mix. People can follow easily, and these are the keywords that can be I don't know whether we have time for a presentation, but at A
Excellent. Now, yeah, because
FCE, or certainly I find that
Yeah, so what, if I, Annie, if I could just come in there, I think what you criticism of between communication skills and language. The orientation towards greater accuracy, saying communication at B1, we are independent, we can communicate. How many words? How often do they repeat the same words? All these more formal aspects of language.
so which ES-specific purposes? Is anybody an ESP trainer who would like to come on stage here? And what kind of ESP are you teaching? Let us know in the text chat.
English for work, and I'm quite interested as well because I think with ESP students, competencies are more important generally than exam levels. So measuring competencies and using a CEFR going on an exam route, which is not really that helpful. That's my experience. Anyway,
I quite agree.
But I haven't thought about adopting this, to be honest.
The CFR does not require test.
Yeah.
the chat lines about accuracy. Perhaps I can just give an example. I said at the very beginning, the trend in the CEF is that real English for business purposes at B2, because below B2, a B2 presentation should be a minimum presentation and require the heads of department who wish to go out and make C1 skills in presentation. I've seen about Kenyan communicating, that's absolutely correct. But as soon as you go beyond a certain level, if the level you wish to achieve, whether it's your own personal ambition or whether it's a level that your company requires you to achieve, plus at B2, C1, you have to be more accurate in order to be more effective, because if we know ourselves from our own experience, if a person gives a presentation is not effective. And
just as regards, I mean, it touches on the discussion to levels, but if somebody is a C1,
and if the TOEFL exam says between so many points and so many points you'll be B1 and so many points and so you'll be B2, of the communicative option, the community.
Sue has an interesting target group, agricultural. She says they give a heck about levels. That's an yes. Do they need? Could you then say?
I have. Same field, about the same issues, that they sort of thing is far more valuable to them than pretty much anything else I do. To be honest.
Yes. But that hasn't happened. An important further development of one other point I would still like that levels are not an automatic, because they are sheet levels. What I think we should see the levels outside the testing and the qualification area. I think we should see levels as a description of performance and competence. And these levels of descriptions on C2 show a progression in the learning curve. And whether we say not necessarily what the Common European is about. It's not a question of saying between 1 and B2, you wait, say, 120 hours, and then suddenly you're B2. There are all kinds of steps in between. And the Common European Framework does actually have A2 plus, B2 and B1 plus, but they haven't established themselves because they're even more difficult to define than the larger block. Any discussion on this on these levels should distinguish between test or qualification or assessment on the one hand and proficiency on
Not really. I do general English at secondary school, so I wouldn't say I have, but I have been researching the European framework, and I think the key again is in the flexibility of immediate relevance, and of course, areas of immediate relevance for pilots are going to be different from farmers, and are going to be for you as a teacher to adapt what you're teaching and still be in that.
And can I ask the question of prof? And he's
so they are mixed ability levels. So we have lots of different levels in the same class. But even same student
formal qualification. Analysis. My example with there were 50 categories, and how many did the trained and tested in all the is 10% from the Common European Framework by establishing a profile according to the individual skills and linguistic competence categories.
Yeah. Well, I had to training once that, and it was around, and we had a recording of French speaker explaining some subject matter.
Mm. And that is why it's important. That's why it's important to have words so that you can filter out the various elements of the language performance. And yourself with the Common European, we'll look at video. And every be at that level, because if you can't do that, if you're teaching a B1, don't know what is B1 and what is B2, you can never next level because you don't know that hidden extra that should be produced in order to for a student to be able to achieve the higher level.
Yeah, and so I would like to slowly wrap up. The question to you, Jeff, at the very end.
At the present time, the developments are going into individual languages because there's a project for, you may have seen it, the English project. Which is a kind of replacement mean that you are a native speaker of their language because you may have been brought up language of schooling, a language of school seems to be developing into a replacement moment. Otherwise, I'm see, which is how English for business purposes.
Redefinition. And he asked the practitioner. Sorry, passport is not?
No, someone just saying it's not.
The question, which is one of the last questions here on the list, is how can
especially, you know, I especially having a mobility groups in my case, what I do is I do project work and I coach as much as possible so that everybody can learn something else from what they already know, and everybody can realize the tasks or projects at their own and be always learning a bit more. But I think it is very
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That. Whether you are at A or whether you are at C1, communication skills still need further development. The A level, A1 and 2 level play a less as long as communication is taking place. But as soon as you reach B1 and B2, we then have to place a greater, they have to give accuracy, whether it's pronunciation accuracy, whether it's grammatical accuracy, whether it's lexical accuracy. It's interesting, and that is when language becomes effective in communication skills. So we have balance, communication, and accuracy depending on the level at which we are teaching, and that is why of the WYSIWYG that people who buy a B1 course should get a B1 in the classroom.
Statement to that discussion?
I think the thing that I back to the beginning of the discussion when we were talking about the differences of things, particularly in the UK compared with other, and the emphasis here on the levels that equate to exams. And I think the kind of commercial side of the exams, particularly things like IELTS and FCE, and more increasingly the ESP exams, that it is the business case than
question is, has any of choice do this and this and this and this? Never? Okay.
Portfolio. To make learning transparent. And that is one of the products that came out of the European framework. And to make people aware of what they have already achieved.
And
Absolutely. Sorry.
I can share the link to
there's always, there's always a can-do statement that you they can, and that long of a period to be able to maintain motion. So I think the can-do state
most of the important things have been mentioned. I think teachers should look at the 6 questions again and decide for themselves for their learners, because a lot of what we have talked about in the last 60 minutes has been connected with the questions. Learning are they learning for themselves? Are they learning for business purposes? Are they learning in order to be able to do so? Perhaps also that teachers still that a person at B2 should be able to
have, Vicky, which language?
English.
Oh, yeah,
English
of course.
not,
Of course.
of
Yeah.
course. I mean, my
Why should
native
this
language.
get- With a B1 level. Were the saying. And from
Okay.
no,
Yes.
does he have? Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thanks
And
to everybody
thanks,
for the interesting
Vicky, for
questions.
joining.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks to all
Bye.
for your comments. Holly, Susan, I would love to dearly save this text chat and extract the thoughts out of it and put it into a blog. For yes, chat history was sent. I'm not quite sure whether it actually does really send the chat history to me. For some reason, I don't seem to be receiving it. All of it. I hope it was sent. If not, I'll chase it up. Okay, Marcia wants promoted. Make host. And now, before you disappear, guys, into break, we have a wonderful, wonderful set. Still 10 minutes if you have, and bear, for our fabulous team here of Belter. Mirke is online. Mirke, just switch on your webcam if you could. We're moving over to Belter. We are in the break already, in the official break. We decided to put Belter in just for a 15-minute presentation of this Association for Teachers in Belgium, just newly founded 6 months ago. They've done a lot of webinars and advertisements, so a lot of people do know what they're saying and what they've been through to become an association for language teachers. We stopped the recording here. Oh, apologies, I should have stopped already. Stop recording.